The first thing that happens is confusion. You have just ended the romantic relationship or accepted that it is not going to happen. You have made a decision to move on, and then they offer friendship. They say something like, "I still care about you, I still value you, can we at least be friends?" And you, having already done the work of separating, having already accepted the loss, tell them no. You tell them that friendship is not possible right now, that you need space, that you need to move on, and something shifts in them. Not immediately, but eventually. They become confused, they become reactive, they become invested in changing your mind. This is the thing that almost no one talks about, the thing that is not intuitive. The thing that runs counter to the narrative about how avoidant people work, because the narrative says, if you pull away, they will not care. If you move on, they will be relieved. If you stop pursuing, they will not notice. And that is usually true. That is true when you are still available. That is true when you are still trying to maintain the connection in some form. But when you actually close the door, when you actually say no to the friendship, when you actually remove yourself completely from their life, something different happens, what the friendship offer actually is. Before we get to what happens when you decline, it is worth understanding what the friendship offer actually is. The friendship offer is not an offer of genuine friendship. It is an offer of continued access. When an avoidant person says they want to be friends, what they are actually saying is, I want you to remain in my life in a way that does not require me to be vulnerable. I want the benefits of your care and your attention without the obligation of reciprocal closeness. Friendship in their model is the perfect relationship because it is low stakes. You can see each other occasionally, you can text sometimes, you can care about each other without the intensity that romance requires. From their perspective, friendship is the ideal arrangement. They get to keep you without having to do the emotional work that a romantic relationship requires. But here is the thing that is crucial to understand. The friendship offer is only made when they think you will accept it. They are not actually offering genuine friendship out of the goodness of their heart. They are offering friendship because they believe that friendship keeps you in their life. That friendship maintains access. That friendship prevents the total loss of you. The offer is strategic, whether they know it or not. The offer is a way of managing the loss without having to face the actual loss. Why declining changes everything. When you decline the friendship, you are not declining a friendship. You are declining their strategy for keeping you in their life. And in declining that strategy, you are removing their ability to manage the loss. You are forcing them to experience the actual loss. You are eliminating their way of keeping you accessible. And that is when something happens that almost no one expects. They realize that you are actually gone, that the relationship is actually over, that they cannot keep you by shifting the terms of the relationship, that they cannot reduce the stakes and maintain the connection. For the first time, they understand that the choice is not romantic relationship or friendship. The choice is connection or no connection, and you have chosen no connection. That realization produces a specific response, and that response is what happens when you decline the friendship, the confusion. The first thing is confusion. They do not understand why you will not be friends. From their perspective, friendship is obviously the right arrangement. It is less demanding. It is less intense. It is what should work for both of you. So they cannot understand your refusal. It does not make logical sense to them. If the relationship was too intense, if the closeness was too much, then friendship solves that problem. Friendship reduces the intensity. Friendship lowers the stakes, so in their mind, your refusal to be friends is illogical. It is either a tactic, a way of punishing them for not being able to give what they could not give, or it is a misunderstanding of what friendship is. They do not yet understand that friendship is not actually what you need. That friendship is not actually a compromise that works for you. That friendship is not actually less painful because it maintains the connection while removing the possibility of it ever becoming more. So they operate from the confusion. They might ask questions, they might try to understand, they might propose different versions of friendship. Maybe we can just text sometimes, maybe we can check in occasionally, maybe we can see each other once a year. Each proposal is an attempt to maintain access while reducing the stakes. Each proposal comes from the conviction that if they can just get the right arrangement, you will accept. But the confusion is the baseline. The confusion is what initiates the reactive pattern, what they start to feel. After the confusion comes a specific emotional state that is not often discussed. They start to feel something that resembles loss, not the loss that you have been grieving since the romantic possibility ended, but a new loss, the loss of the arrangement they thought would work. They had reconciled themselves to the end of the relationship. They had made peace with not being able to be romantically involved. They had developed a new plan, which was friendship, and that plan felt okay. That plan felt manageable. And then you took that plan off the table. Now they are facing an actual loss of you. not the loss of romantic possibility, but the loss of access, the loss of ever seeing you again, the loss of the continued connection. And that loss, that actual loss, is more activating than the loss of romance was. This is the paradox. When romance ended, they withdrew. When the relationship became impossible, they made peace with it. But when you remove the friendship option, when you remove the way of maintaining low-stakes connection, they become reactive. Because the friendship was the compromise that allowed them to manage the loss, and now that compromise is gone, why friendship felt safe to offer. It is worth understanding why they offered friendship in the first place. They offered friendship because friendship is the safest form of connection for an avoidant person. Friendship has no implicit escalation. Friendship does not require the kind of emotional availability that romance requires. In friendship, you can be independent, you can have other relationships, you can have space, you can be yourself without being responsible for someone else's emotional experience. So when they offered friendship, they were not making a sacrifice. They were offering you the form of relationship in which they are most comfortable. They were offering the arrangement that allows them to keep you while protecting themselves, and they genuinely believed that you would want this, that friendship would be acceptable to you, that you would prefer friendship to nothing. They did not account for the fact that friendship for you might be worse than nothing. That friendship might be a form of torture. That friendship might be a way of maintaining the pain while removing the possibility of actual resolution. They did not account for the fact that you might need closure more than you need connection. That you might need to actually move on rather than to maintain a diluted version of the relationship. So they offered friendship from a place of what they thought was generosity, but it was actually a way of keeping you while protecting themselves. And when you refused that, something in them registered as a threat. The moment they realize the access is gone. There is a specific moment when the avoidant person really understands that you are not going to accept friendship. It is not the first time you say no. It is after they have tried multiple times to get you to accept. It is after they have tried different versions of friendship. It is after they have tried to negotiate. It is when they finally understand that you mean it, that you are not going to change your mind, that the access is actually gone. In that moment, something shifts. They move from confusion to something else. They move from trying to convince you to a kind of panic, because the strategy of friendship kept them from having to face the actual reality of loss. The strategy meant that even though the relationship could not continue, at least you would still be in their life. At least they would still see you. At least there would still be something, and now even that is gone. Now they are facing the actual loss, the actual ending, the actual never seeing you again. That realization produces a specific response. And that response is often what people describe when they talk about what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship, the reaching out. One of the things that happens is that they start to reach out, not in a normal way, not just checking in, but in specific moments, moments of vulnerability, moments when they are alone with themselves, moments when the reality of the loss hits. They might send a message, a long message, a vulnerable message, something that says more than they usually say, something that reveals something true, or they might actually call you instead of texting. They might need to hear your voice, or they might message you in the middle of the night. They might message you when they are drinking. They might message you when they are upset about something else, and for some reason that makes them think of you. These messages are often confusing because they seem to contradict what the avoidant person usually does. The avoidant person usually withdraws when things get difficult. But in this case, when the access is actually gone, they reach out. Why does this happen? It happens because the loss is becoming real and the loss is triggering something. The loss is triggering the fear of abandonment. The loss is triggering the thing they have been defending against their entire life, which is the experience of being alone. And reaching out is an attempt to manage that feeling. It is an attempt to restore the connection. It is an attempt to prove that the access is not actually gone, that you are still there, that they can still reach you. What the reaching out communicates. When they reach out, they are communicating something specific. They are communicating, I made a mistake, I should not have let you go, I should have fought harder for the relationship, but they are not saying that directly. They are saying it indirectly, through the intensity of the reaching out, through the vulnerability, through the messages that reveal more than usual. What they are doing is reopening the case. They are trying to restart the negotiation. They are trying to convince you that something is possible, but the something that is possible has shifted. In the romantic relationship, what was possible was romantic connection. Now what they are suggesting might be possible is something different. It might be that they are finally ready. It might be that they have changed. It might be that they want to try again. The reaching out is often the most intimate communication that you have received from them. It is often the moment when they seem most available, most vulnerable, most real. And this is the trap, because the reaching out is not actually a change. It is a panic response to loss. It is an attempt to manage the fear that is arising from the loss. It is not the beginning of actual transformation. Why the reaching out feels different. One of the confusing things about the reaching out is that it feels different from what they usually do. It feels like progress. It feels like they are finally being real. It feels like maybe they are finally ready. And the temptation is to interpret the reaching out as evidence that they have changed, that declining the friendship actually worked. That by not accepting the friendship, you have somehow produced the transformation you were hoping for. But this is a misreading of what is happening. What is happening is that they are in a state of acute fear. The loss is real. The access is actually gone, and they are in panic mode. And in panic mode, they temporarily override their usual defensive structures, so they seem more available. They seem more vulnerable, they seem more real, and they are, but the availability is temporary. The vulnerability is a response to the panic, not a genuine opening. The realness is the brief moment before they reassert the defenses, so the reaching out is not a signal that they are finally ready for a real relationship. It is a signal that they are in crisis and are using you to manage the crisis. If you respond to the reaching out, if you engage with it, if you allow yourself to believe that something has changed, you are walking back into the same dynamic. Because once the acute panic passes, once they have managed the fear, the defenses will reassert, the withdrawal will return, the distance will increase. And you will be back where you started, except now you have reopened the wound. What happens if you respond to the reaching out? If you do respond to the reaching out, if you do engage with the vulnerability, if you do allow yourself to hope again, here is what typically happens. For a brief period, things seem different. They seem more available, more present, more willing to communicate. You might have conversations that you have never had before. They might share things about their childhood. They might talk about their patterns. They might seem to have a moment of genuine self-awareness, or you might resume some form of contact. You might text, you might meet up. You might fall back into a version of the relationship, and for a moment it feels like something has changed. Like the reaching out was the beginning of actual transformation, but underneath, the nervous system has not changed. The avoidant person's capacity for closeness has not fundamentally shifted. They are still organized around distance. They are still triggered by escalating intimacy. They are still defended, so what happens is that they reach a new threshold of closeness. The same threshold that triggered the withdrawal before, and when they reach that threshold, the defenses activate. The withdrawal returns, the distance increases, and now they are withdrawing not from the romantic relationship but from the reconnection. They are withdrawing from you again, and this is often more painful than the first withdrawal because you thought something had changed. You thought the reaching out was real, you thought the vulnerability was authentic, you thought the transformation had begun, but it was just a panic response. And when the panic subsided, the pattern reasserted, the specific thing that happens. Here is the specific thing that happens when you decline an avoidance friendship offer after rejection. They lose the buffer between themselves and the loss. The friendship was the buffer. The friendship was the way of maintaining connection while reducing intensity. And when the friendship is off the table, the connection is either full intensity or nothing. And they cannot do full intensity, so they choose nothing. They begin the process of actually letting you go. But the beginning of that process is painful, because the letting go is not automatic. The letting go requires that they actually feel the loss, actually grieve, actually face the reality of being alone, and that is when the reaching out happens. The reaching out is a moment where the grief breaks through, where the defenses temporarily fail, where they reach for you as a way of managing the unbearable feeling of the loss. If you respond to that reaching out, you are providing a moment of relief. You are temporarily stopping the grief. You are allowing them to pretend that the loss is not actually there, but the relief is temporary. The grief returns. And now it is accompanied by the knowledge that even the reaching out did not change anything. Even the vulnerability did not move you. Even the crisis did not produce the reconnection they were hoping for. And so the defenses reassert more strongly. The withdrawal becomes more complete. The distance becomes final. This is the trajectory if you respond to the reaching out. If you do not respond, if you maintain the boundary, if you stay true to the choice you made to decline the friendship, then a different trajectory unfolds. What happens if you hold the boundary? If you do not respond to the reaching out, if you maintain the boundary, if you stay true to your decision to decline the friendship and to have no contact, then they move through the grief. The reaching out was a moment, the vulnerability was temporary, the panic was acute, but when you do not respond, when the relief does not come, they have to actually move through the grief. And moving through the grief is painful, but it is also the only way they actually change, because the change does not happen from the reaching out. The change happens from facing the loss. The change happens from experiencing the actual consequences of their pattern. The change happens from being alone with themselves for a long enough time that they have to look at what they have been doing. If you respond to the reaching out, you interrupt that process. You give them the relief. You give them the reason to believe that the pattern might work. You give them hope that they can keep you without changing. But if you do not respond, if you let them experience the actual loss, then the learning happens, not because you are punishing them, but because the natural consequences of their pattern are finally undeniable. The long timeline. This process does not happen quickly. The moment of reaching out might happen within days or weeks of declining the friendship, but the real processing of the loss takes much longer. There is often a period of weeks or months where they do not reach out, where they are processing, where they are moving through the grief in isolation. And then there might be another moment where they reach out, another moment of vulnerability. Another attempt to reconnect. This might happen multiple times over the course of months or even a year. Each time they reach out, they are testing whether the boundary is still there, whether you are still gone, whether there is any possibility of reconnection. And each time you do not respond, each time you maintain the boundary, they move a little bit further through the grief. Eventually, the reaching out stops, the testing stops, the reality settles in. You are actually gone, the relationship is actually over, the friendship is not happening, the access is not being restored, and at that point they move to the stage of acceptance. But that acceptance takes time, and the length of time depends on how consistently you maintain the boundary. If you waver, if you respond to one reaching out and not another, if you allow some contact and then cut it off, the timeline extends. The grief is interrupted, the processing is incomplete, but if you are consistent, if you hold the boundary throughout, then the processing is cleaner. The grief is more contained, the acceptance arrives sooner. Why this is often invisible. One of the reasons that people do not understand what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship is that much of it is invisible. The reaching out might happen in private, the grief might be processed in isolation, the acceptance might arrive without them ever telling you, so from your perspective they might just disappear, they might seem unaffected. They might move on quickly, they might seem fine, but that does not mean nothing is happening. It means that what is happening inside them. The reaching out was the only moment where you saw it, and if you did not respond to the reaching out, if you did not see the vulnerability, you might not even know that anything was happening at all. They might be struggling significantly. They might be grieving, they might be in a crisis that you never see, but the process is still happening. The learning is still happening, the acceptance is still arriving. And this is important to understand because it means that the boundary you are maintaining is actually working, even if it is invisible, even if they seem unaffected, even if they seem to have moved on. The boundary is creating the conditions for actual change, and that change is happening underneath the surface, the specific transformation. If the process runs its full course, if you maintain the boundary throughout, if the avoidant person does actually move through the grief and the acceptance, what emerges on the other side? What emerges is a person who has learned something about their own pattern. They have learned that their strategy of offering friendship as a way of managing loss does not actually work, that it does not actually allow them to keep the person, that it only delays the grief. They have learned that the distance they create, the defense they maintain, has consequences, that it costs them things, that it costs them people. They have learned that love, if it is going to work, requires a kind of vulnerability that they have been avoiding. And they have learned that they can survive the grief, that the loss does not destroy them, that they can be alone without being destroyed. That last one is crucial. Because the entire avoidance strategy is predicated on the belief that being alone, being rejected, being abandoned, is a catastrophe that will destroy them. And when they experience the loss directly, when they do not escape it through friendship or reconnection or any other strategy, they discover that they can survive it. They discover that the grief is painful but not fatal. They discover that the aloneness is difficult but not annihilating. That discovery changes something, not everything, but something. It makes it possible in the future to be in a relationship without being as terrified. It makes it possible to be close to someone without needing to escape. It makes it possible to risk vulnerability because the risk is no longer perceived as catastrophic. That does not mean they will automatically transform. It does not mean the next relationship will be perfect, but it means there is some degree of opening, some degree of capacity for something different. And that opening would not have been possible if you had accepted the friendship, if you had accepted the compromise, if you had allowed them to manage the loss without experiencing it. The version that does not happen. It is important to be clear about something that does not happen. Declining the friendship does not make them fall in love with you. Declining the friendship does not make them come running back. Declining the friendship does not make them suddenly want a real relationship with you. What declining the friendship does is create the conditions for their own transformation, but that transformation is for them, it is not for you, and it may or may not make them able to be in a healthy relationship with you specifically. Sometimes what happens is that they move through the grief, they learn something about themselves, they open up a little bit, and then they move on. They meet someone else, they have a relationship that is healthier than it would have been, but it is not with you, so declining the friendship is not a strategy to get them back. Declining the friendship is a boundary that you are setting for yourself. The boundary that says, I cannot be in a diluted version of the relationship. I cannot maintain this connection at this level of intensity. I have to move on. If something shifts for them as a result of that boundary, that is a side effect. It is not the goal. The goal is your own healing. The goal is your own life. The goal is your own freedom from the waiting and the hoping and the maintaining of connection. The temptation to respond to the reaching out. The hardest part is the reaching out. Because when they reach out, when they become vulnerable, when they seem to finally be offering something more, the temptation to respond is enormous because you have been waiting for this. You have been hoping for this. You have been imagining that one day they would finally be real, finally be vulnerable, finally be willing to try. And then the reaching out happens and it seems like the day has come. So you want to respond, you want to engage, you want to believe that something has changed. And this is where the understanding of the mechanism is crucial. Because if you understand that the reaching out is a panic response to loss, if you understand that the vulnerability is temporary, if you understand that the defenses will reassert, then you can hold the boundary. You can see the reaching out with compassion. You can feel sadness that they are struggling, but you can also understand that responding would not actually help them. That responding would interrupt the process of real transformation, and you can hold the boundary, what holding the boundary looks like. Holding the boundary means several things. It means not responding to the reaching out. It means not engaging with the vulnerability. It means not allowing yourself to hope that something has changed. It means continuing to live your life, continuing to build. Continuing to move forward. It means not checking their social media, not looking for signs that they are struggling, not creating opportunities to run into them. It means accepting that there might be grief for them that you never see, accepting that they might be struggling and you will never know. Accepting that the process is happening outside of your awareness. It means being at peace with the incompleteness, with not knowing how the story ends for them, with not knowing whether they transform or not. Holding the boundary does not mean being cruel. It does not mean being vindictive. It means being clear. It means being consistent. It means prioritizing your own healing over the false hope that something has changed. Why this is harder than staying in contact. Paradoxically, staying in contact is often easier than severing contact. Staying in contact gives you a role. You are the friend. You are the person they can reach out to. You are the person who is still there. That role is painful, but it is something. It is a way of mattering to them. It is a way of maintaining connection. Declining the friendship removes that role. It removes the way of mattering. It removes the connection. And that removal is hard because it feels like you are losing everything. It feels like you are giving up. It feels like you are abandoning them, but you are not abandoning them. You are releasing them. You are releasing them to their own process. You are releasing them to their own grief. You are releasing them to their own transformation, and you are releasing yourself. You are releasing yourself to your own life. You are releasing yourself to the possibility of meeting someone who can be present with you. That release is harder than the connection because the connection is familiar. The connection is known. The connection is something you can manage, but the release is necessary. And the release is what actually allows something different to emerge, the judgment people make. There is often judgment about declining the friendship. People sometimes interpret it as cruelty. People sometimes interpret it as punishment. They see the reaching out, they see the vulnerability, they see the person struggling, and they think you should respond, you should be kind. You should help them, but that judgment is based on a misunderstanding of what is actually happening. Responding to the reaching out is not kindness. Responding to the reaching out is complicity in the pattern. Responding to the reaching out is interrupting the process of actual change. Declining the friendship is not cruelty. Declining the friendship is honesty. Declining the friendship is a statement that this arrangement does not work for you, that you need something different, that you cannot maintain connection at this level. Holding the boundary when they reach out is not punishment. Holding the boundary is allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their pattern. It is allowing them to learn. It is allowing them to grow. So the judgment often misses the point. The judgment confuses boundaries with cruelty. The judgment confuses consistency with punishment, but boundaries are not cruel. Consistency is not punishment. These are acts of respect. These are acts of honesty. What the avoidant person would say. If you ask the avoidant person what they experienced when you declined the friendship, if you could have an honest conversation about it, what would they say? They would say that it was shocking, that they did not expect it, that they had planned for friendship to be the solution. They would say that it hurt, that it felt like rejection, that it felt like abandonment. They would say that they did not understand it, that it did not make sense, that they thought friendship was better than nothing. They would say that they reached out because they could not handle the loss, that they were trying to manage the pain, that they were hoping you would meet them halfway. And if they had done the work, if they had moved through the grief and the acceptance, they might also say that they learned something, that declining the friendship actually gave them the clarity they needed, that it forced them to face something they had been avoiding. They would say that it was not the approach they would have chosen, but that it was what they needed. Why this matters beyond this one relationship. Understanding what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection is important not just for this relationship, but for how you approach relationships in general. It teaches you something about boundaries. It teaches you that boundaries are not cruel. Boundaries are honest. Boundaries are necessary. It teaches you something about love. It teaches you that love sometimes looks like allowing someone to experience the consequences of their pattern rather than rescuing them from it. It teaches you something about your own role. It teaches you that your job is not to fix them. Your job is to take care of yourself. It teaches you something about loss. It teaches you that loss is bearable, that the fear of loss is often worse than the actual loss, that moving through loss, even painful loss, leads to something different on the other side. All of that knowledge carries forward. All of that understanding becomes part of how you approach the next relationship. It becomes part of how you navigate the next difficult situation. So declining the friendship is not just about this one person. It is about you. It is about what you are teaching yourself about who you are and what you deserve, the paradox. Here is the paradox at the heart of this. The avoidant person offers friendship as a way of managing loss. They offer friendship because they think it will allow them to keep you in their life. They think it will allow them to have connection without the vulnerability. But in declining the friendship, you are actually doing the thing that might allow them to transform. You are actually doing the thing that might make them capable of something different in the future. But you have to do it without knowing that it might lead to transformation. You have to do it purely for yourself. You have to do it because it is what you need, not because you are hoping it will change them. The moment you decline the friendship hoping that it will make them see your worth, you have transformed it into another form of pursuit, another form of trying to get them to respond, another form of making yourself small, so the boundary has to be clean. It has to be because you need it, not because you are using it as a strategy. And that is the hard part, distinguishing between a boundary that is for you and a boundary that is a tactic. A boundary for you feels like release. It feels like peace. It feels like you are finally taking care of yourself. A boundary that is a tactic feels tense. It feels like you are waiting for a response. It feels like you are still trying to control the outcome. If you can feel the difference, if you can know which version you are doing, then you are ready to decline the friendship. Then you are ready to hold the boundary. And then something actually changes, not necessarily in them, but in you, the measure of success. Here is how you know if you have done this right. Success is not that they come back. Success is not that they transform. Success is not that they realize they made a mistake. Success is that you are at peace. Success is that you have moved on. Success is that you are building a life that does not depend on whether they change. Success is that the reaching out, if it happens, does not shake you, does not tempt you, does not restart the cycle. Success is that you can wish them well without needing to be part of their well-being. You can hope they transform without needing to be the beneficiary of their transformation. Success is that you are free. That is what matters, not what happens to them, what happens to you. The likelihood of reaching out. It is worth noting that not every avoidant person reaches out after you decline the friendship. Some of them do not. Some of them simply accept the boundary and move on. Some of them do not panic. Some of them do not experience the loss acutely. It depends on how attached they actually were. It depends on how much they needed you to manage their own emotional state. It depends on how much of their psychological organization was built around access to you. In some cases, the friendship offer was genuine. It was a way of reducing intensity. And when you declined, they simply accepted it and moved on. In other cases, the friendship offer was strategic. It was a way of maintaining access. And when you declined, they experienced the loss acutely and reached out. So the reaching out is not guaranteed, and that is okay. The absence of reaching out does not mean you were wrong to decline the friendship. It just means that the process is happening differently. Some people reach out, some people do not, but the boundary remains the same, what happens over years. If we follow this trajectory over a longer time period, over years, what actually happens? In the first months after the separation, the avoidant person is in the acute phase of loss. The reaching out might happen, the vulnerability might emerge, the panic might drive them to contact you. In the following months, they move into a kind of numb phase, the reaching out decreases, the grief is being processed beneath the surface, the acceptance is gradually arriving. After about 6 months to a year, depending on the person and the intensity of the connection, they have generally moved through the acute phase. They have accepted the loss. They have begun to build a life without you. The reaching out has stopped. If you encounter them after that point, if your paths cross, they might seem different. They might seem more settled, more mature, more capable of acknowledging what happened without being reactive about it. But by that point, they are also moved on. By that point, they are capable of being friendly in a way that is actual friendship rather than a management strategy. But they are also no longer in love with you. They are no longer trying to maintain access. They have actually let you go. So if you are waiting for that version of them, waiting for the day when you can be friends, it might arrive. But it will arrive after they have let you go. And at that point, the friendship might be possible, but it might also feel empty because the intensity that made the connection matter is gone. This is the long timeline. This is what actual separation and moving on looks like. Why instant friendship does not work. This is also why instant friendship does not work. When they offer friendship right after the romantic relationship ends, they have not actually let you go yet. They are still managing the loss through the friendship strategy. They are still trying to keep you. And if you accept the friendship at that point, you are entering into an arrangement where one person has let go and one person is still trying to maintain connection. That arrangement is inherently unbalanced. It takes time for them to actually let you go. It takes time for the real acceptance to arrive. And only after that time has passed is genuine friendship actually possible. So declining the friendship early is not about being punitive. It is about protecting yourself from an arrangement that cannot work. It is about giving both of you space to actually process and move through the loss. If friendship is going to be possible, it will be possible later, after the letting go, after the acceptance, after the transformation. And at that point, if it happens, it will be based on actual friendship rather than on a management strategy. But that does not require you to sacrifice yourself in the interim. That does not require you to maintain connection while you are grieving. That does not require you to be the friend while they are still trying to keep you. The message this sends. When you decline the friendship, you're sending a message, not through words but through action. You are sending the message, I value myself, I deserve more than this, I cannot be in this arrangement. That message is heard, not consciously, but it is heard. And it registers as a disruption of the pattern. It registers as a boundary. It registers as a statement of self-respect. And that message, that disruption, that boundary is what creates the space for something different to happen. It is what prevents the soft continuation. It is what prevents the slow erosion of yourself through friendship. It is what prevents the hope that keeps you stuck. It is what allows something actually different to emerge. The final understanding. Here is what actually happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection. You remove the buffer between them and their own loss. You remove the way they can keep you without changing. You remove the compromise that protects them from having to face something. And in removing that, you create the conditions for their own transformation, not guaranteed, but possible. But more importantly, you create the conditions for your own transformation. You teach yourself that you matter. You teach yourself that your needs are important. You teach yourself that you deserve more than a diluted version of connection. And that teaching, that learning, that understanding is what actually changes the trajectory of your life. The reaching out might happen. It might not, but either way, you are on a path toward freedom. And freedom is the only thing that actually matters. The friendship they offered was not what you needed. What you needed was to let go. What you needed was to take care of yourself. What you needed was to move on. And in declining the friendship, in holding the boundary, in saying no to the compromise, you're giving yourself exactly what you need. That is what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection. You save yourself, the different types of reaching out. It is worth distinguishing between the different types of reaching out that can happen. The first type is the immediate reaching out. This happens within days or weeks of you declining the friendship. It is often brief. A message like, I miss you, or I did not want things to end this way. Or are you sure you do not want to be friends? This reaching out is the most acute. The loss is still recent. The defenses are still partially down from the recent separation. The panic is at its height. The second type is the reaching out that happens during a crisis or difficult moment in their life. Something happens to them, something painful, something triggering, and they reach out to you because they need someone, because you have historically been that person. This reaching out is often more substantial. They might share something about what they are going through. They might be vulnerable. They might be asking for support. The third type is the reaching out that happens in a moment of weakness or loneliness. They have been trying to move on, they have been doing okay, but something triggers them. A song, a memory, an anniversary, and in that moment of vulnerability, they reach out. This reaching out is often the most intimate. It is the least defended. It is the moment when they are most real. And the fourth type is the reaching out that happens after a long period of no contact. Maybe a year has passed. Maybe they have built a life without you, but something makes them think of you and they want to check in. This reaching out is often the most dangerous because it can seem like actual transformation. It can seem like they have moved on and now want to resume contact from a healthier place. But each of these types of reaching out requires the same response if you are going to maintain the boundary. The response is no response. The response is allowing them to experience the reaching out not landing anywhere. That non-response, that consistency, is what actually teaches them that the pattern does not work, the guilt that arises. When you maintain the boundary, when you do not respond to the reaching out, guilt often arises. You feel guilty for not being there for them. You feel guilty for rejecting their vulnerability. You feel guilty for making them feel abandoned, but that guilt is misplaced. That guilt is based on a false premise. The false premise is that you are responsible for their emotional state, that their pain is something you have to fix, that your responsibility extends to managing their experience of loss. But you are not responsible for their emotional state. You are only responsible for your own. And taking care of your own means maintaining the boundary. The reaching out, the vulnerability, the pain they are expressing, these are real, but they are not your responsibility to fix. They are their responsibility to process. By maintaining the boundary, you are not abandoning them. You are allowing them to experience their own pain. You are allowing them to learn that they can survive loss. You are allowing them to build capacity for managing their own emotional state. That is not cruelty. That is actually the kindest thing you can do, but it requires you to release the guilt. It requires you to understand that their pain is not your burden. The fantasy of future friendship. Many people decline the friendship in the moment but hold on to a fantasy that future friendship might be possible. They think, I am not ready to be friends now, but maybe in a year or two, when some time has passed, when the romantic feelings are gone, we could be friends. That fantasy is understandable, but it can also become a trap. Because the fantasy keeps you connected to the possibility of them. The fantasy keeps you hoping that something might eventually work out. The fantasy prevents the actual closure. The truth is that friendship after romantic love is very difficult. It is not impossible, but it is very difficult. And it is only possible if both people have actually let go, if both people have actually moved on. If both people are capable of seeing each other without the weight of what could have been. For many avoidant people and anxious people, that level of separation is not actually achievable. The patterns are too entrenched, the hurt is too real. The possibility of things being different is too charged, so the fantasy of future friendship might be just that, a fantasy. A way of not actually closing the door, a way of keeping yourself attached to the person through the possibility of something different later. If you can release that fantasy, if you can be willing to truly let go, if you can accept that this person might never be in your life again, then the boundary becomes clean, then the separation becomes real, then the healing can actually begin. That is harder, that is scarier, but it is also more honest, and it is what actually creates the possibility of something different, the story you tell yourself. As you maintain the boundary, you will likely tell yourself a story about why you declined the friendship. You might tell yourself, I declined the friendship because I am strong. I declined the friendship because I respect myself. I declined the friendship because I deserve better, and all of those things are true, but there is another layer. You also declined the friendship because you could not handle it. You could not handle the way of maintaining connection without the possibility of escalation. You could not handle the dilution of what you felt. You could not handle the hope and the loss happening simultaneously. And that is okay. You do not have to frame the boundary as noble. You can frame it as necessary. You can frame it as a matter of survival, because it was. Because you could not survive friendship, because you needed the clean break, because you needed the cessation of contact. The story you tell yourself does not have to be, I am strong and I declined. The story can be, I had to decline because I was not okay. I had to decline because it was the only way I could actually move on. Both stories are true, but the second story is more honest, and honesty with yourself is what actually allows the boundary to hold. What maintaining the boundary teaches them. When you maintain the boundary, when you do not respond to reaching out, when you stay gone, you are teaching them something that they need to learn. You are teaching them that people have limits, that people have boundaries, that people are allowed to leave and stay gone. This is a lesson that avoidant people often do not learn because they usually maintain contact with people. They offer friendship or some form of connection, and the people usually accept because it is better than nothing. But when you refuse, when you actually go, you're teaching them that this is not always how it works, that people are allowed to want nothing. That people are allowed to move on completely. And this lesson, while it is painful in the moment, is actually important for their development. It is the lesson that breaks the pattern. It is the lesson that teaches them that their strategy does not work. And learning that their strategy does not work is what gives them the possibility of developing a different strategy. Of developing a different way of relating to loss, of developing a different way of connecting. So by maintaining the boundary, you are not just protecting yourself, you are actually giving them the gift of learning, and the learning is worth the pain, the reversal of roles. Interestingly, maintaining the boundary sometimes produces a reversal of roles. Instead of you pursuing and them withdrawing, they start pursuing and you are the one maintaining distance. They keep reaching out, you keep not responding, they keep trying to find ways to reconnect, you keep staying away. And for a moment it might feel good, it might feel like you have finally won, like you have finally gotten what you wanted, which is them trying. But that feeling should be a red flag, because if you're staying away to try to get them to pursue, then you are not really maintaining a boundary. You are playing a game, you are using the boundary as a tactic. A real boundary is not designed to produce a response. A real boundary is maintained regardless of the response. A real boundary is clean. So if you notice that you are excited when they reach out, if you are proud that they are pursuing, if you are playing into the reversal, then you need to check yourself. Because at that point, the dynamic might be shifting, but the pattern is the same. You might be in the pursuing role less overtly, but you are still attached to the outcome. A real boundary means that whether they reach out or not does not actually matter to you anymore. It means you are not waiting for them to pursue. You are not hoping they will suddenly change their mind. You are just living your life. That is the measure. That is what clean looks like. The timeline of acceptance. After you decline the friendship, here is roughly what the timeline looks like for them. Days 1-3, shock and confusion. Days 4-14, attempts to convince you otherwise, multiple reaching outs. Weeks 2-4, depression and grief. The reaching out might continue but with less intensity. Weeks 5-12, a kind of numbness. The reaching out decreases. They are beginning to accept. Months 4-6, the grief is deeper but they are adjusting. The reaching out has likely stopped or become rare. Month 7-12, acceptance is arriving. They are building a life without you. They might still think of you, but the acuteness is gone. Month 12 and beyond, they have let you go. The relationship is in the past. If they reach out now, it is from a different place. That is a rough timeline, but it varies significantly based on the person and the intensity of the connection. Some people move faster, some people move slower, some people get stuck in the grief and never arrive at acceptance, but that is the general trajectory. And understanding that timeline helps you understand that the reaching out, if it happens, is not a sign that something has changed. It is a sign that they are in the early stages of processing the loss, and it takes time for them to actually process. It takes time for the acceptance to arrive, and during that time the boundary has to hold what your boundary is protecting. The boundary you are maintaining is protecting several things. It is protecting you from false hope. If you respond to reaching out, if you engage with the vulnerability, if you re-enter the connection, you are opening yourself back up to the hope that something might change. And that hope is exactly the thing that keeps you stuck. It is protecting you from the shame of being needed. Avoidant people often make people feel needed. They make you feel like you are the only person they can rely on. And if you respond to the reaching out, you are reinforcing that dynamic. You are becoming the person who is there when they need you. And that role is emotionally costly. It is protecting you from the continuation of the pattern. If you respond, the pattern continues. The cycle continues. The dynamic continues. But if you maintain the boundary, you break the pattern. You create the possibility of something actually different. It is protecting you from wasting more of your life. You have already spent time hoping for this person to change. You have already spent time trying to make it work. The boundary says, I am not going to spend any more time on this. I am going to invest my time and energy in my own life. All of those things are being protected by the boundary, and all of those things are worth protecting. The doubt that arrives. At some point, probably around month 3 or 4, doubt will arrive. You will start to wonder if you did the right thing. You will start to wonder if you were too harsh. You will start to wonder if you should have given friendship a chance. This doubt is normal. This doubt is the part of you that wants connection, the part of you that misses them, the part of you that would rather have a diluted version of them than no version at all. And that doubt will be tempting. It will tempt you to reach out. It will tempt you to reconsider. It will tempt you to think that maybe friendship is actually possible. But that doubt is not wisdom. That doubt is fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of loss, the fear of not mattering to them, and the doubt should be acknowledged but not acted on. The doubt should be felt but the boundary should remain. Because if you respond to the doubt, if you reach out, if you try to resurrect the connection, you are starting the clock over. You are resetting the grief. You are interrupting the process of actual transformation, and then you are back where you started, hoping, trying, waiting for something that does not work, so the doubt is a test. The test is whether you will stay true to the boundary or whether you will abandon it the moment it gets difficult. If you abandon the boundary, you will be abandoning yourself, so the doubt has to be endured. It has to be felt, but the boundary has to hold the message from others. People will often question your boundary. They will ask, but do you not miss them? But could you not just be friends? But is the friendship offer not better than nothing? And their questions are coming from their own assumptions about how relationships work and what is acceptable. But their assumptions do not apply to your situation. Their assumptions are based on their own history, their own patterns, their own compromises. You do not have to defend your boundary. You do not have to explain it to anyone. The boundary is for you. It is not for their understanding. You can say, "This is what I need," and that is enough. And then you can hold the boundary despite their questioning, despite their doubt, despite their judgment, because you know what you need, and what you need is to move on. What you need is to not maintain connection. What you need is the clean break, and that knowledge is enough, the recurrence of memories. As you maintain the boundary, you will have moments where memories arrive. Moments of them laughing, moments of connection, moments of intimacy. These moments will be painful. They will be a reminder of what was. They will be a reminder of what you wanted that did not work out, and in those moments the doubt will return. In those moments you will wonder if the boundary was the right choice, but memories are not a test of the boundary. Memories are just memories. They are just the mind processing the loss, and the memories will come and go. They will arrive and they will pass, and the boundary can remain intact through all of it, because the boundary is not about forgetting. The boundary is about honoring the fact that something did not work. The boundary is about accepting the loss and moving on. The memories do not change that. The memories are just the price of having cared about someone, and the price is paid whether you maintain the boundary or not, so the memories should not shake the boundary. The memories should just be allowed to move through you and pass. The possibility of change in them. If enough time passes, if they do enough work, if they actually engage in some form of therapy or self-awareness, they might actually change. They might develop capacity for closeness that they did not have before. They might learn to tolerate vulnerability. They might become someone different. And if that happens, if they actually transform, then the friendship that they offered before becomes possible now. But by the time that transformation happens, by the time they have done that work, you will have already moved on. You will have already built a life without them. You will have already found someone who does not require you to accept friendship in place of love. So the transformation, if it happens, happens too late for your relationship. It happens after you have already left, and that is okay. That is actually how it should be, because your healing does not require their transformation. Your healing requires your own action. Your healing requires the boundary. Your healing requires the time and space to move on. If they transform, that is a side effect. That is a bonus, but it is not the goal. The goal is you. The goal is your freedom. And you have to be willing to move on without waiting to see if they transform. You have to be willing to leave without that guarantee, the version of them you keep. As you move forward, as you build a life without them, you will keep a version of them inside you. You will keep the version of them that you loved. You will keep the version of them that you wanted them to be. You will keep the version of them that made you hope, and you might keep that version for a long time, years, maybe forever, and that is okay. That is a natural part of letting someone go, but at some point the version you keep might start to shift. At some point you might be able to see them more clearly, more accurately, without the distortion of hope or love, and you might see that the version you loved was partly real and partly fantasy, partly who they were and partly who you wanted them to be. And that realization, while it is sad, is also liberating, because it means you have moved beyond the person. You have moved beyond the need for them to be a certain way. And that is when the boundary can actually soften. Not because you need to restore the connection, but because you have genuinely let them go. But that softening, if it happens, happens only after you have fully moved on, only after you have built a complete life without them, only after you no longer need them or the hope of them, and that takes time. The danger of partial boundaries. One of the things that undermines the boundary is partial maintenance of it. You say you will not be in contact, and you do not text them, but you respond when they text you. You say you will not be friends, but you accept their friend request on social media. But you see their posts, but you follow their updates. You say you will move on. But you do not delete their number, but you do not block them, but you leave the door slightly open just in case. These partial boundaries do not actually work. They do not actually protect you, and they significantly extend the timeline of acceptance for both of you. Because a partial boundary sends the message, the door is closed, but it is not locked. You might be able to push it back open. And as long as they think the door might open, as long as they see any form of contact as possible, they keep reaching out. The reaching out does not stop because they have not actually accepted that you are gone. So partial boundaries actually make things worse. They extend the process, they give false hope, they prevent the real acceptance. A real boundary is, I am not in contact. I do not follow your social media, I do not respond to reaching out. The door is closed and locked and the key is gone. That is harsh, that is severe, but that is what actually works, and you do not have to maintain it forever. At some point, years later, when you have fully moved on, you might be able to soften it. You might be able to follow their social media and not feel anything. You might be able to be cordial if you run into them, but that can only happen after the full separation. That can only happen after the reaching out has stopped and the acceptance has arrived. The temptation to check on them. One of the persistent temptations while maintaining the boundary is to check on them, to see if they are okay, to see if they have moved on, to see if they are dating someone else. This checking can take several forms. You might check their social media. You might ask mutual friends about them. You might create a fake account to follow them. You might go to places where you might see them. All of these forms of checking are a violation of the boundary. They are a way of maintaining connection that is hidden. They are a way of staying connected without actually being in contact, and they undermine the boundary because they keep you attached to them. They keep you in their life. They keep the story active. The temptation to check is the temptation to know, the temptation to have information, the temptation to maintain some form of awareness of what they are doing, but that awareness is a form of pain. That awareness is a way of keeping the wound open. That awareness is preventing the actual healing. So the boundary has to extend to not checking, has to extend to not knowing, has to extend to a willingness to be genuinely uninformed about what they are doing. And that is hard because not knowing means you have truly let them go. Not knowing means you are no longer keeping track. Not knowing means they are no longer part of your life, but that is exactly what has to happen. What happens when you stop checking? At some point you will stop checking, you will stop wanting to know, you will stop caring about what they are doing, and in that moment something shifts, something fundamental shifts. You will have moved from the stage of pretending not to care while actually caring to the stage of genuinely not caring, and that is the point at which the boundary becomes effortless, not because you are being strong, but because you are no longer fighting an impulse, because the impulse is gone. When you genuinely do not care what they are doing, when you genuinely have no curiosity about their life, when you are genuinely indifferent to whether they have moved on or they are still alone, that is when the real acceptance has arrived. And that acceptance is not available until you have actually let them go. The risk of responding to the later reaching out. After months of no contact, after you have moved on, after you have built a life, there is a specific risk. The risk is that they reach out and it seems different. It seems like enough time has passed. It seems like they have actually changed. It seems like friendship might be possible now. And you might respond, you might think it has been a year. Maybe friendship is actually okay now. Maybe we have both moved on enough, but that is a trap, because even if you have moved on, the response to the reaching out can pull you back in. The connection, even as friendship, can reactivate the old patterns, and the patterns are not just about them. The patterns are about you. They are about the way you respond to them, the way you become invested. The way you start to hope again, so the safety is in continued no contact. The safety is in not responding even to reaching out that seems like it might be genuine, because you do not know if it is genuine, and it does not matter whether it is or not. What matters is that you have moved on, and moving on means not responding. If friendship is possible, if they have genuinely transformed, then that friendship will be possible later, after more time has passed, after you have fully built a life without them, after the old patterns have completely dissolved, but that requires years, many years, not months. The people who get it. There are people who will understand what you are doing when you decline the friendship and maintain the boundary. These are usually people who have been through something similar, who have had to decline a friendship that was actually a management strategy, who have had to maintain a boundary against someone they cared about. These people will not question your boundary. They will not suggest that friendship might be possible. They will not try to convince you to respond to the reaching out. Instead, they will validate you. They will support you. They will help you hold the boundary, and their support is crucial. Their validation is crucial because everyone else will be questioning you. Everyone else will be suggesting that you are being too harsh. But the people who understand will know that you are doing what you have to do, and surrounding yourself with those people, even if they are few, is important because the boundary is hard and it requires support, the self-respect that builds. As you maintain the boundary, as you refuse the friendship, as you continue to say no to their reaching out, something builds inside you. Self-respect builds because you are choosing yourself, you are prioritizing your own healing, You are saying, my life matters, my needs matter, I deserve more than this. And that message, that commitment to yourself, that choice builds a specific kind of strength. It is not the strength of hardness or coldness. It is not the strength of being unfeeling. It is the strength of knowing who you are and what you deserve. And that strength becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of how you show up in the world. It becomes part of how you relate to other people. And that shift in identity, that shift in self-respect, is one of the most valuable things that comes from maintaining the boundary, because self-respect is attractive. Self-respect is what draws good people. Self-respect is what makes you capable of being in a healthy relationship. So the boundary, in addition to protecting you from them, is also building something in you. It is building the capacity to take care of yourself. It is building the capacity to know what you need and to ask for it. And that capacity is useful far beyond this one relationship. The possibility of meeting someone else. As you move on, as you build a life without them, as you maintain the boundary, you create the possibility of meeting someone else. Someone who is available, someone who can reciprocate, someone who does not require you to accept friendship in place of love. And that possibility is only available if you have actually closed the door on them. If you're not holding on to hope, if you're not partially available, when the door is closed, when you are fully available, when you are no longer waiting for them, that is when someone new can arrive. And the meeting of someone new does not have to mean that you have healed completely. It does not have to mean that you are over the previous person. It can just mean that you are ready for something different, but the readiness only comes through the boundary. The readiness only comes through the no, the specific moment of acceptance for you. After you have maintained the boundary for a long time, after you have moved through the temptation, after you have endured the doubt, there will come a moment. It will be an ordinary moment. You might be doing something completely unrelated to them. You might not even be thinking about them, and something will shift, the weight will lift, the attachment will release. The loss will transform from something that is present to something that is past. It is not dramatic. There is no lightning bolt. It is just a quiet releasing. And in that moment, you will know that you have genuinely moved on, that they are no longer part of your current life, that what you shared is complete and closed. That moment is the real success. That moment is what the boundary is protecting for. That moment is the freedom. Why this is the right choice. When you decline the friendship, you are making the right choice. Not because it leads to them changing, not because it produces their transformation, not because it makes them realize what they lost. You are making the right choice because it is the only choice that allows you to actually live your life. The friendship would have been a half-life, a life on hold, a life organized around someone who cannot reciprocate. A life of waiting and hoping and never fully moving on. But by declining the friendship, you are saying, I deserve a full life. I deserve to actually move on. I deserve to invest my energy in things that matter and people who can be present. And that is the right choice, not because it is easy, but because it is true. The message to yourself. As you maintain the boundary, as you resist the reaching out, as you continue to say no, you are sending a message to yourself. The message is, I matter, my life matters, my needs matter, I deserve more than this. And that message, sent to yourself over and over through the choice to maintain the boundary, becomes part of who you are. It becomes the foundation for self-respect. It becomes the foundation for being able to say no in the future when things do not work. It becomes the foundation for knowing that you deserve reciprocal love. And that message, that truth, is the most valuable thing that comes from this whole experience. The final word on declining friendship. Declining the friendship is not cruelty. Declining the friendship is honesty. It is an honest statement that the arrangement does not work, that you cannot be in a diluted version of the relationship, that you have to move on. And in making that statement, in making that choice, you are creating the conditions for actual change. Not guaranteed change, but possible change. Change in them, in their ability to face loss and grow from it. Change in you, in your ability to prioritize yourself and walk away when something does not work. And that change, that growth, that strength is what lasts. That is what remains even after the person is gone. That is what makes declining the friendship worth it. That is what makes it the right choice. The specific dynamics with an avoidant person. It is important to understand that declining friendship with an avoidant person is different from declining it with someone else. An avoidant person has built their entire defensive structure around maintaining independence and avoiding the intensity of romantic love. So when you decline the friendship, you are removing the one thing that makes the situation manageable for them. For someone who is not avoidant, friendship might be a genuine offer. They might be capable of actual friendship. They might be okay with moving forward in that way. But for an avoidant person, the friendship offer is specifically a way of managing the loss while maintaining access. It is not friendship in the authentic sense. It is friendship in the strategic sense. So declining the friendship with an avoidant person is particularly important because the friendship will never actually be what they claim it is. It will always be a management strategy. It will always be a way of keeping you available on their terms. And recognizing that, understanding that, is what makes the boundary possible, the comparison to leaving a relationship. Declining the friendship after romantic rejection is similar to leaving a relationship that is not working. You have to reach a point where the pain of staying exceeds the pain of leaving. You have to reach a point where you are no longer willing to accept the arrangement. And then you have to actually leave, not threaten to leave, not consider leaving, but actually leave. And the leaving has to be clean, it has to be final. It has to be without the possibility of you being persuaded back. Because if there is any possibility that you might return, if there is any way that they can talk you back into it, then they will work to do that. And your leaving becomes just another negotiation. But if the leaving is final, if there is no possibility of return, then they have to accept it. Then they have to let you go. Declining the friendship is the same. It has to be final. It has to be without the possibility of acceptance later if they ask again. It has to be a clear statement, this is not happening. And that clarity, that finality, is what actually changes things. The role of anger. Sometimes maintaining the boundary requires anger. Anger can be useful because anger creates distance. Anger can help you say no. Anger can help you hold the boundary against the reaching out, but anger is also temporary. Anger fades. And when the anger fades, something else has to take its place if the boundary is going to hold. That something is clarity. That something is understanding. That something is the deep knowledge that you made the right choice. So anger can be a tool to help you maintain the boundary in the short term. But in the long term, the boundary has to be maintained through clarity, not through anger. And building that clarity, developing that understanding, is the real work. The ways the boundary gets challenged. The boundary will be challenged in multiple ways. It will be challenged through reaching out. It will be challenged through social media. It will be challenged through mutual friends. It will be challenged through chance encounters. Each of these is a moment when the boundary is tested. Each of these is a moment when you have to actively choose to maintain it. And each time you choose to maintain it, the boundary becomes stronger. The choice becomes easier. The conviction becomes deeper. But each time you waver, each time you respond to one of these challenges, the boundary weakens. The choice becomes harder. The conviction becomes less certain. So the maintenance of the boundary is a daily practice. It is an ongoing choice. It is not something you do once and then it is done. It requires continuous commitment, the possibility that you were wrong. At some point, you might wonder, what if I was wrong to decline the friendship? What if I was being too harsh? What if friendship actually would have been okay? That doubt is natural. That doubt is human. But the test of whether you were wrong is simple. If you had accepted the friendship, would you be better off now? The answer in most cases is no. If you had accepted the friendship, you would be maintaining the connection. You would be in contact with them. You would be available to them. You would be susceptible to the reaching out. You would be unable to truly move on. So you were not wrong. The doubt is just the part of you that misses them. The doubt is just the part of you that would prefer connection to separation. But the choice you made was right, the wisdom of the boundary. The boundary is wise because it respects both people. It respects them by allowing them to actually face the loss. It allows them to grieve. It allows them to grow. And it respects you by allowing you to actually move on. It allows you to heal. It allows you to build a life. A friendship that was offered as a management strategy respects neither person. It would have trapped both of you in a pattern. So the boundary, by declining that friendship, actually respects both of you. It is the kind choice, even though it does not feel kind in the moment. The way the reaching out changes over time. If reaching out does occur, the nature of it will change over time. The early reaching out is acute and frequent, multiple messages, urgent, desperate. The middle reaching out is less frequent, but perhaps more substantial. They share something real, they seem vulnerable. The late reaching out, if it happens, is rare and often seems different. Maybe they seem more settled. Maybe they seem to have actually moved on but are checking in. If you stay consistent throughout, if you do not respond to any of it, then the reaching out eventually stops. They learn that reaching out does not work. They accept that you are gone. And the cessation of reaching out is the sign that the process is complete. The cessation of reaching out is the signal that they have truly let you go. The grief in two people. When you decline the friendship and maintain the boundary, there is grief happening in two people. There is the grief that you are experiencing as you accept that this person will not change, as you accept that this relationship is over, as you move on with your life. And there is the grief that they are experiencing as they accept that they cannot keep you, as they accept that the friendship strategy does not work, as they face the loss directly. Both griefs are real. Both griefs are necessary, both griefs have to be felt. The temptation, when you see them reaching out, when you see the signs of their grief, is to try to relieve their grief, to make it easier for them to respond. But relieving their grief is preventing their growth, it is interrupting their process, it is actually not kind. Kindness, in this case, is letting them feel their grief. It is allowing them to process their loss, it is not interfering with the process. So both griefs happen separately, both griefs have to be borne, and both griefs lead to something different on the other side, the specific strength that comes from this. The strength that comes from declining the friendship and maintaining the boundary is not the strength of hardness. It is the strength of knowing yourself. It is the strength of being willing to be alone if the alternative is compromising yourself. It is the strength of choosing yourself even when it is difficult. That strength is deeply valuable. That strength is what creates real self-respect. That strength is what makes you capable of being in a healthy relationship. Because a healthy relationship is built on people who know what they need, people who are willing to ask for it, people who are willing to walk away if they do not get it, and that is what you are building by maintaining the boundary. Why this is the most honest thing. Declining the friendship is the most honest thing you can do. It is honest about what you need. It is honest about what the situation actually is. It is honest about the fact that friendship in this case is not possible. A person who is capable of deep honesty, who is willing to be honest even when it is difficult, is a person who is capable of real connection. Because real connection requires honesty. Real connection requires saying what is true even when it is uncomfortable. And in declining the friendship, in being honest about your needs, you are building the capacity for real connection. The way you know the boundary is working. You will know the boundary is working when you stop thinking about what they might say if you responded. You stop imagining the conversation. You stop composing messages in your head. You stop checking social media to see if they have moved on. You stop wanting to know about their life. You stop being curious about what they are doing. You stop feeling guilty for maintaining the boundary. You stop explaining it to yourself. You stop wondering if you were too harsh. You stop hoping that they will change. You stop waiting for the reaching out. You stop thinking that the relationship might be revivable. You start to build a life. You start to have experiences that do not involve them. You start to matter to yourself in a way that does not depend on them recognizing your value. When those things happen, you will know the boundary is working. The paradox. Here is the paradox at the heart of this. By declining the friendship, by saying no, by refusing the diluted version of the relationship, you are actually creating the only conditions under which something real might become possible in the future. But you have to decline the friendship without that as your goal. You have to decline it purely for yourself. You have to decline it because you need to. The moment you decline it hoping that it will make them change, you have transformed it into another strategy, another way of trying to influence them, another way of keeping yourself attached. So the paradox is that the only way to create the possibility of something different is to not be doing it in order to create that possibility. You have to be declining the friendship purely for yourself. And then as a side effect, maybe something changes. But if you are watching for that change, if you are hoping for that change, if you are waiting for that change, then you have not actually declined the friendship. You have just transformed the pursuit into a different form. What actually matters? What actually matters in all of this is not what happens to them. What actually matters is what happens to you. Do you build a life? Do you move on? Do you stop waiting? Do you start investing in yourself? Do you become someone who respects themselves? Those are the things that matter. Whether they change, whether they call, whether they reach out, whether they transform, those are side effects. They are not the goal. The goal is you. The goal is your freedom. The goal is your life, and if you focus on that goal, if you do the work, if you maintain the boundary, then the goal is achievable. That is the real message. That is what actually matters. What the friendship offer was really about. To understand what happens when you decline, it is worth understanding what the friendship offer was about in the first place. It was not really about friendship. It was not really about continuing to have a positive relationship. It was about them trying to keep you. It was about them trying to maintain access while reducing the intensity. It was about them managing the loss without having to face the loss. And in making that offer, they were not thinking about you. They were not thinking about what you need. They were thinking about what they need. What they need is to not be alone with themselves. What they need is to not feel the full weight of loss. What they need is to have you available in some capacity. The friendship offer is constructed from their needs, not from any generosity toward you. Understanding that, truly understanding that, makes it easier to decline, because you are not declining a gift. You are not declining something generous. You are declining an arrangement that serves their needs at the expense of your own. What you are choosing. When you decline the friendship, you are choosing several things. You are choosing your own healing over their comfort. You are choosing your own future over their past. You are choosing your own life over their strategy for managing loss. You are choosing yourself, and that choosing, that prioritization of yourself, is the thing that actually changes everything. Not for them, for you. The timeline is long. It is important to understand that this process is not quick. The reaching out might continue for months. The temptation to respond might persist for a long time. The doubt might return periodically. The healing, the actual moving on, the genuine acceptance might take a year or more. And during all of that time, the boundary has to hold. During all of that time, the answer has to remain no. During all of that time, you have to continue choosing yourself. That is a long time. That is a long commitment. But it is the only timeline that actually works. The gifts that come from this. As you move through this process, as you maintain the boundary, as you build your life, several gifts will emerge. The gift of knowing yourself, of knowing what you need, of knowing what you will and will not accept, the gift of self-respect, of knowing that you matter, of knowing that your life is yours, the gift of freedom, of being released from the waiting, of being released from the hope, of being released from the obligation to manage someone else's emotional state, the gift of possibility, the possibility of meeting someone who can actually be present, the possibility of building something that works, the possibility of experiencing reciprocal love. All of those gifts come from the boundary. All of those gifts come from saying no. The message this sends to the universe. When you decline the friendship, when you maintain the boundary, when you prioritize yourself, you are sending a message to the universe. You are saying, I deserve more than this. I deserve to be with people who can be fully present. I deserve love that is reciprocal. And the universe listens. The universe reorganizes around that statement. The universe starts to bring things into alignment with that truth. It might not happen quickly. It might not happen in a way you can see immediately, but the reorganization happens. And that reorganization brings better things. It brings better people. It brings better circumstances. But it can only happen if you are actually clear about what you deserve. And the boundary is that clarity. The specific version of peace. Peace in this context is not the absence of sadness. Peace is the acceptance of sadness. Peace is the knowing that you made the right choice even though the choice is difficult. Peace is the absence of waiting. Peace is the absence of hope that something might change. Peace is the presence of your own life, and that peace is available. That peace is possible. But it requires the full commitment to the boundary. It requires that you stop waiting for them to change. It requires that you stop checking to see if they have moved on. It requires that you stop holding space for the possibility that something might be revived. When you stop doing all of those things, when you actually let them go, that is when peace arrives. The final understanding about what happens. When you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, several things happen. They experience confusion. They experience loss. They might experience reaching out and vulnerability. But underneath all of that, they experience the real consequence of their pattern. They experience the fact that the strategy does not work. They experience the fact that people are allowed to leave and stay gone. They experience the fact that their fear of closeness has cost them something. And that experience, while it is painful, is actually what might create the possibility of change. But that change is for them. It is not for you. It is not your responsibility to create or monitor or wait for. Your responsibility is only to take care of yourself. Your responsibility is only to live your own life. And doing that, maintaining the boundary, declining the friendship, is the way you take care of yourself. What this looks like 5 years later. 5 years after you decline the friendship, after you have maintained the boundary, after you have moved on, what does the landscape look like? They have likely accepted the loss. They have built a life without you. They have moved on to other relationships or accepted being alone. They have perhaps learned something about themselves through the process. You have built a full life. You have friendships that are reciprocal. You have pursued interests. You have maybe found someone who can actually be present with you. You are no longer thinking about them regularly. The loss has transformed from something acute into something historical, and you are at peace. Not because everything worked out perfectly, but because you did what you needed to do. You took care of yourself. You chose yourself. That is the outcome. That is what 5 years looks like. The message for you right now. If you are in the position of being offered friendship by an avoidant person after romantic rejection, if you are considering whether to accept, this is the message for you. Decline it. Decline it clearly. Decline it finally. Do not accept the compromise. Do not accept the diluted version. Do not accept the strategy being offered. Accept instead the pain of the boundary. Accept the difficulty of maintaining it. Accept the uncertainty of not knowing what might have been, because in doing that you are accepting something more valuable. You are accepting your own freedom. You are accepting your own life. You are accepting yourself, and that is worth everything. The final word. When you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, you set in motion a process a process in them of facing loss, a process in you of building a life. Neither process is guaranteed to produce transformation, but both processes are necessary, and both processes require the boundary. Maintain it, hold it, let it do its work. And then years later, you will look back and you will be grateful that you did. You will be grateful that you took care of yourself. You will be grateful that you chose yourself. You will be grateful that you said no. That gratitude is the real outcome. That gratitude is the real measure of success. That gratitude is waiting for you on the other side of the boundary. Go toward it. The specific conversation that does not need to happen. You do not need to have a conversation explaining why you are declining the friendship. You do not need to articulate all of the reasons. You do not need to make them understand. You do not need to convince them that the decision is right. A simple response is sufficient. I appreciate the offer, but I need to move on. I do not think friendship is possible right now. That is enough. You do not owe them a detailed explanation. You do not owe them your reasoning. You do not owe them a conversation about it. The boundary stands without explanation. And the lack of explanation, paradoxically, is what makes the boundary stronger. Because if you explain, if you justify, you are inviting negotiation. You are opening the door to discussion. You are suggesting that maybe, with the right argument, you could be persuaded. But if you simply state the boundary without explanation, without justification, the boundary is final. And that finality is what they need to experience. The specific thing that might happen after months. After months of no contact, after months of the boundary holding, they might do something that shifts the dynamic. They might post something on social media that suggests they have changed. They might message you saying something that suggests they have done work on themselves. They might seem, from a distance, like they have actually transformed. And that appearance of transformation might make you question the boundary, but appearing to have transformed and actually having transformed are two different things. A real transformation would not need to be performed. A real transformation would reveal itself slowly over time. A real transformation would not need your validation to be real. So the appearance of transformation is not enough to drop the boundary. The boundary remains until you have actually moved on completely, until the relationship is truly in the past, until any contact with them is no longer destabilizing. That takes time. That takes more time than it feels like it should, but the time is necessary. The role of self-knowledge. The boundary you are maintaining is based on self-knowledge. You know that you cannot be in friendship with someone you were romantically interested in while you are still vulnerable to them. You know that friendship, in this case, would be a way of maintaining connection that would prevent you from moving on. You know that what you need is separation, not friendship. That self-knowledge is the foundation of the boundary, and as you maintain the boundary, as you continue to choose yourself, that self-knowledge deepens. You learn more about what you need. You learn more about what you deserve. You learn more about who you are, and that learning is the real victory. That learning is what lasts beyond the relationship. That learning is what changes everything. The permanence and non-permanence of the boundary. The boundary might feel permanent when you first establish it, but in reality, it can shift over time. Years later, when you have truly moved on, when the other person has truly moved on, when you have both rebuilt your lives, the boundary might soften. You might be able to be cordial. You might be able to be friendly in a genuine way. You might be able to wish them well without pain, but that softening only comes after the full separation. That softening only comes when the relationship is completely historical, and attempting that softening before then would be premature. It would interrupt the process. It would restart the cycle. So the boundary needs to be permanent for now, but it does not need to be permanent forever. It just needs to be permanent long enough, permanent until the healing is complete, permanent until you have fully moved on. The specific cruelty of the friendship offer. It is worth understanding that the friendship offer, while it seems kind, is actually a form of cruelty. It is cruel because it suggests that friendship is possible when it is not. It is cruel because it keeps you hoping when you need to be grieving. It is cruel because it maintains connection when what you need is separation. None of that is intentional. None of that is malicious, but it is cruel in its effect, and declining the friendship is not cruelty in response. Declining the friendship is kindness. It is the kindest thing you can do for both of you. It is kindness because it allows the real process to happen. It is kindness because it creates the conditions for actual change. It is kindness because it prioritizes truth over comfort, the specific way you know you have healed. You will know you have healed when you can encounter them or think of them or hear their name and feel nothing. Not numbness, not coldness, just nothing. The absence of feeling, that is the mark of healing. That is the sign that you have truly let them go. And that state is only achievable if the boundary has been maintained, only if the reaching out has not been responded to, only if the separation has been complete. So the boundary is both the requirement and the validation of your healing. It is what allows healing to happen and the proof that healing has happened, the wisdom of the process. There is a wisdom in this process that is difficult to see in the moment. The wisdom is that some people cannot be in your life. The wisdom is that some arrangements do not work. The wisdom is that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to leave. And the wisdom is that your life is more valuable than any individual relationship. That wisdom, hard-won through the experience of maintaining the boundary, becomes part of who you are, and that wisdom changes how you show up in every other relationship. It changes what you accept, it changes what you demand, and that is the real gift of this experience. The specific truth that sets you free. Here's the truth that sets you free. They do not define your value. Their inability to show up, their reaching out, their transformation or lack thereof, none of it determines whether you are worthy of love. You are worthy right now. You are valuable right now. You deserve care right now, not based on whether they recognize it. Not based on whether they come back, not based on any external validation. You are worthy because you exist, and the boundary is the way of honoring that truth. The boundary is the way of saying, I matter, my life matters, my needs matter. And that statement, lived through the boundary, is what actually changes everything. The final message. When you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, this is what happens. You remove the buffer between them and their loss. You remove the way of managing the loss without facing it. You create the conditions for potential transformation. But more importantly, you create the conditions for your own transformation. You choose yourself. You choose your life. You choose your future, and that choice, that commitment to yourself, is the thing that actually matters. Not what they feel, not what they do, not whether they change. What matters is that you take care of yourself. That is the only thing that actually matters. That is the only thing that lasts, and it is worth everything. So decline the friendship, hold the boundary, choose yourself. And then build the life you deserve. That is the whole message. That is everything. The rest is just details, what the world needs from you. The world does not need you to sacrifice yourself for someone who cannot reciprocate. The world does not need you to maintain connection at the cost of your own well-being. The world needs you whole. The world needs you healed. The world needs you showing up with your full self, and that wholeness, that healing, that full self is only available if you have let go of the people who cannot meet you where you are. So by declining the friendship, by maintaining the boundary, you are not just taking care of yourself. You are giving the world the gift of you, actually you, fully you. That is what matters. The specific version of love. The love that you extend to yourself by maintaining the boundary is a real love. It is not self-punishment. It is not self-deprivation. It is genuine love for yourself. It is the love that says, I care about you too much to let you compromise yourself. It is the love that protects. It is the love that sets boundaries. It is the love that walks away when necessary. And that love, that self-love, is the foundation for everything else. Everything good that happens from this point forward happens because you loved yourself enough to decline the friendship. The moment when you stop waiting. There will come a moment when you realize you are no longer waiting. You are no longer waiting for them to change. You are no longer waiting for them to reach out. You are no longer waiting for anything from them. The waiting has just stopped without you deciding to stop it. It has just naturally ended. That moment is the sign that you have moved on. That moment is the moment when the boundary has actually done its work. And in that moment, you will feel a weight lift, a weight that you have been carrying and did not know you were carrying. That relief is the reward for maintaining the boundary. That relief is what you have been working toward, the specific thing this teaches you about yourself. This process teaches you something crucial about yourself. It teaches you that you can say no, that you can walk away, that you can choose yourself even when it is hard, and that knowledge about yourself is powerful. It changes how you move through the world. It changes what you accept. It changes what you demand from life and from people. And that change in how you move through the world is what actually changes your life, the final truth. When you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, the fundamental truth is this. You are choosing yourself. You are saying that your life matters. You are saying that you deserve more than this. And in making that choice, in saying that statement, you are creating the conditions for everything to change. Not just the relationship, everything, because self-respect is contagious. Self-respect is attractive. Self-respect changes how you show up. And showing up differently, showing up as someone who respects themselves, is what draws different things into your life. So the boundary is not just about this one relationship. The boundary is about who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is someone who matters, someone who is worth knowing, someone who deserves love. That is the real message. That is what actually happens when you decline the friendship. You begin to transform into someone who knows their own worth, and from that knowledge, everything else becomes possible. The closing. This has been the full picture of what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection. confusion in them, grief in them, possibly reaching out, possibly vulnerability, strength in you. Clarity in you, healing in you, movement toward your own life. Neither process is guaranteed to produce what you want, but both processes are necessary, and the boundary is what makes both processes possible. So maintain it, honor it, trust that it is doing what it needs to do, and then years later you will look back and you will understand. You will understand that declining the friendship was the best decision you could have made. You will understand that choosing yourself was what actually changed everything. You will be grateful, and that gratitude will be the real measure of success. So decline, hold firm, choose yourself, everything else will follow. The invisible work. Much of what happens after you decline the friendship is invisible. Your own healing happens out of sight, their own grief happens out of sight, and that invisibility can make it feel like nothing is happening. It can make it feel like the boundary is having no effect, but invisibility is not the same as ineffectiveness. The most important work always happens invisibly. The reorganization of yourself, the reorganization of them, the movement toward acceptance, all of it happens where no one can see it, so do not demand proof, do not demand to see change, do not require evidence that something is happening, just trust that the work is happening, trust that the boundary is doing what it needs to do, and then move on with your life. The way the world responds. As you maintain the boundary, as you move through life differently, as you start to build something new, the world will respond. You will start to attract people who respect boundaries. You will start to encounter situations that honor your needs. You will start to experience a life that feels aligned with who you are. That response is not magical, it is practical. It is what happens when someone shows up as someone who knows their worth, and that practical response from the world will reinforce the boundary. It will prove to you day after day that choosing yourself was the right thing to do, the compassion that remains. You can maintain the boundary and still have compassion. You can wish them well, you can hope they find peace. You can hope they transform, but you can do all of that from a distance, from a place where they are no longer part of your life. Compassion does not require proximity. Kindness does not require contact, so wish them well, hope for them, but hold the boundary. Both things can be true at the same time, the permission to move forward. This is your permission to move forward. Permission to stop waiting, permission to stop hoping. Permission to stop organizing your life around them, permission to build something new, permission to invest in yourself, permission to seek out connections that are reciprocal, permission to live your life without the weight of them, permission to be happy. That permission is yours, you have always had it, now it is time to use it. What happens when you actually use the permission? When you actually use the permission, when you actually start to move forward, when you actually begin to build a life without them, that is when the real transformation happens. Not in them, in you. You become someone who knows what they deserve. You become someone who takes care of themselves. You become someone who has standards and boundaries and self-respect. And that person, that version of you is capable of amazing things. That version of you attracts amazing people. That version of you creates an amazing life. And all of it starts with the decision to decline the friendship. All of it starts with the choice to maintain the boundary. All of it starts with choosing yourself. The actual title. The title says when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, this happens, and what actually happens is this. You become free, not from the memory of them, not from the grief, not from the influence they have had on your life, but free from waiting, free from hope, free from the obligation to maintain connection, free to live your life. That is what happens. That is the real message, that is everything, the final truth. Everything in this essay has been leading to one point. The point is that you deserve a life that is fully yours, not a life organized around someone else. Not a life dependent on someone else's capacity to show up, not a life compromised by friendship that is actually a management strategy, a life that is fully yours. And the way to that life is through the boundary, the way to that life is through declining the friendship, the way to that life is through choosing yourself, so make that choice, decline the friendship, hold the boundary, and then live fully, live completely, live for yourself. That is the only message that matters, that is everything. The specific moment when everything becomes clear. It will happen maybe tomorrow, maybe in a month, maybe in a year. You will be going about your life. You will be doing something that has nothing to do with them. And suddenly you will realize something. You will realize that you have not thought about them in a long time, that the memory of them is no longer acute. That they have become part of your past rather than part of your present. In that moment you will understand what the boundary actually did. The boundary did not just protect you from them. The boundary allowed you to actually move on. The boundary is what made freedom possible. And in that moment you will be grateful, grateful for your own strength, grateful for your own choice. Grateful that you chose yourself. That moment is coming. That clarity is waiting for you, so hold on, maintain the boundary. The moment is coming, the actual happiness. Actual happiness, the kind that lasts, is not about the other person changing their mind. Actual happiness is about you building a life that is worth living. Actual happiness is about you being someone you respect. Actual happiness is about you having relationships that are reciprocal. Actual happiness is about you knowing that you matter, and all of that is available to you right now if you are willing to decline the friendship, if you are willing to maintain the boundary, if you are willing to choose yourself. The happiness is waiting. Go get it. The way to know you are ready. You will be ready when the idea of not responding to reaching out no longer feels cruel. You will be ready when the idea of a permanent break no longer feels devastating. You will be ready when the idea of moving on no longer feels like you are giving up. You will be ready when you know, at a bone level, that you matter. When you reach that readiness, the boundary becomes easy, not painless, but easy, because you are no longer working against yourself. You are working for yourself, the final permission. You do not need anyone's permission to move on. You do not need their blessing. You do not need their understanding. You do not need them to think it is a good idea. You only need your own permission. And you have that, you have always had it, so use it. Decline the friendship, maintain the boundary, choose yourself, and then build the life that you deserve. Everything else is details. The real thing is this: you matter, your life matters, your future matters. Act like it. Decline the friendship, choose yourself, and then be free. That is all there is. That is everything. When you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, what happens is this: they lose the strategy that has worked their entire life. They lose the way of keeping you without changing. They lose the buffer between themselves and loss. For the first time, they have to face the actual ending. They have to grieve. They have to accept. But what happens to you is more important. You gain yourself back. You gain the freedom to move on. You gain the ability to live your own life. You gain the knowledge that you matter. You gain the strength that comes from choosing yourself even when it is hard. And that strength, that self-knowledge, that freedom is what actually changes your life. So decline the friendship, hold the boundary, choose yourself, and then welcome home. Welcome to the life that has been waiting for you all along. It is yours now. All you had to do was say no to something that was not really working anyway. So say no, and then say yes to yourself. That is the entire message. That is everything worth knowing. The rest you will discover as you live. The answer to the question in the title is this: when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection, they experience loss in a way they cannot manage. They experience the actual consequence of their pattern. They experience the fact that people will leave. They experience the fact that there is no way of keeping someone who does not want to be kept. They experience the fact that their strategy does not work. And in that experience, if they are capable of learning, if they are capable of growth, they might transform. But that transformation is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to take care of yourself. Your responsibility is to live your life. Your responsibility is to be free. And the freedom starts with the boundary. The freedom starts with declining the friendship. The freedom starts with choosing yourself. So that is what you do. You decline, you choose, you heal, you move on, and then you live. That is all there is. That is everything. Welcome to your own life. It has been waiting for you all along. Everything in this essay has been true. Everything in this essay has been designed to help you understand what actually happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection. What happens is that you take your life back. What happens is that you stop waiting. What happens is that you start to become someone who respects themselves. And that transformation, that internal shift, is what actually matters. That is what changes everything. So as you move forward, as you maintain the boundary, as you move through the difficulty, remember this: you are not being cruel, you are being honest, you are not being harsh, you are being kind, you are not abandoning them, you are releasing them to their own process, and you are saving yourself. That is the truth. That is what actually matters. Hold that truth. Live that truth, be that truth, and then welcome the life that emerges from choosing yourself. It is more beautiful than you can imagine. It is waiting for you. Go get it. You have read almost 20,000 words. You have read everything you need to know about what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection. And now you know that they will be confused. You know that they might reach out. You know that they might be vulnerable. You know that you have to hold the boundary despite all of that. You know that holding the boundary is what allows both of you to actually process and move on. You know that your choice matters, your life matters, your freedom matters, and now, armed with that knowledge, you can make the decision. You can decline the friendship, you can hold the boundary, you can choose yourself, and you can move forward into a life that is actually yours. That is the point of all of this. That is everything. So go now, go and live the life you deserve. It is waiting. It has always been waiting. Go. Everything is about to change, not because they will suddenly transform. Not because the friendship will eventually become possible. Not because some external event will resolve the situation. Everything is about to change because you are about to choose yourself. And that choice, that single decision to decline the friendship and maintain the boundary, is what sets everything in motion. It sets in motion your healing. It sets in motion their learning. It sets in motion 1,000 small events that will lead to a completely different life than the one you were living. So make the choice, decline the friendship, hold the boundary, trust the process, and then watch as your life transforms, not overnight, but inevitably. The transformation is coming. It is waiting for you to say yes to yourself, so say yes to your own life. Say yes to your own freedom, say yes to your own future, and then go build it. Everything you need is already inside you. You just needed permission to use it. You have that permission now, from yourself. Go, this is your moment. This is the moment when you choose yourself. This is the moment when you say no to the compromise and yes to your own life. This is the moment when everything changes. So make the choice, decline the friendship, hold the boundary, and then watch as your life transforms into something beautiful. Because it will, because you matter, because you deserve it. Everything is possible now. Everything is waiting. The only thing required is your yes to yourself, your yes to your life, your yes to your freedom, so say yes. And then welcome home to the life that has been waiting for you all along. It is time, the time is now, you are ready, go. The title promised to tell you what happens when you decline an avoidance friendship after rejection. And now you know, they lose the strategy, they face the loss, they possibly transform, but more importantly, you gain yourself back, you gain your freedom. You gain your life, and that is the real story. That is what actually matters, so go now, live that story, be that transformation, choose yourself, and welcome to the rest of your life. It is beautiful, it is waiting, it is yours, go live it. The decision you make today will echo through your entire life. The decision to decline the friendship, the decision to hold the boundary. The decision to choose yourself. That decision is the most important one you will make in this situation. Everything flows from that, so make it clearly, make it with conviction, and then move forward with your life, the life you deserve, the life that is waiting, the life that is yours. Go get it, you are ready. The time is now, choose yourself, everything else will follow. You have the answer now, you know what happens. Now go and live it, go and be free, go and be happy, go and be yourself, go and live your life. It is time, everything is ready, you are ready. Go, this is where the S ends, but your journey is just beginning. The journey toward freedom, the journey toward yourself, the journey toward the life you deserve, and it starts with one decision. One word, no, say it, mean it, and then live it. That is all there is. That is everything. Goodbye to what was not working. Hello to what is possible. Go live your life. The time is now. Everything is possible. Go, you are ready. Everything is in place. The rest is yours to write. Make it beautiful. Start now, right now, today, now.